19 News coming to you from our digital desk. We're about to take you to a news conference that's about to get underway in Lakewood, being held by city officials because of a dangerous intersection. And this hits close to home for Channel 19. This is the intersection where our former colleague Bill Saffos was hit and killed. And it has been deemed an extremely dangerous intersection. And I'm going to show you this map to explain exactly why. Yes, X marks the spot. This is the intersection of Madison and Hilliard Road, Madison Avenue and Hilliard. But you can see there is a lot going on. You have Carabel that intersects here as well. You've got Orchard Grove Avenue. You've got a busy park in Wager Park. And it has just been deemed too dangerous. Not even that far up. You've got Westwood Avenue here on the right side. There is just a lot going on here. And so city officials in Lakewood have said something needs to be done. And today they're making an announcement on just exactly what they think they can do to make this a safer intersection. Let's take you live now to Lakewood.
Get your talking points down so we can. Okay. All right, good morning, everybody. First of all, thank you all for being here today. We're here to talk about pedestrian and bicycle safety in the city of Lakewood, particularly at this intersection, but also citywide. As you know, there's been a number of incidents over the last 5 months or so, and it's really time to taking this very, very seriously. And I want to talk to you today, along with my colleagues from council, Councilman Tom Bullock at large, Councilman Cindy Strebig representing Ward 3, Councilwoman Cindy Marks representing Ward 4. I'm Brian Evans representing Ward 2. We're here this morning to discuss pedestrian safety, not just here, but all over Lakewood. I want to talk about a little about what we're doing first, what we're going to do, and where this is all going to lead in the future. Since December, the Lakewood Police Department has had increased presence at this intersection and other high traffic intersections where there have been incidents across the city. The city is working with an outside traffic engineer to take a comprehensive look at the design of this and other troubled intersections. And that's going to be really taking a look at everything, the pavement, the markings, signal optimization, traffic flow, all those things. So that's a little bit of a longer term solution, but we're working on that now. In the short term, we're working with the administration to find ways to provide immediate relief for traffic calming measures. That could include planters. Also, this spring, as soon as the weather allows, as soon as it gets reliably warm, which in Lakewood we don't know when that'll be, but we're going to be painting the bike lanes that bright green, so it's going to be way more obvious there's a bike lane. And we're also using high reflective paint on the crosswalks, which will make those easier to see for pedestrians and for cars. And the police will continue to have a stepped-up presence in this area until we, see some improvement. Long term, the city is working on a complete streets initiative. This is actually an ordinance that we're looking to pass and hoping to pass that soon. That is going to, as we build our 100-plus-year-old infrastructure, every time we redo a street, we're going to think about that street not in just terms of cars, but in terms of pedestrians, in terms of bicyclists, in terms of people who may be differently abled, and also in terms of the environment. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Councilman Bullock.
Thank you. Thanks, Councilman Evans, and thanks to my colleagues, Councilwoman Strebig and Councilwoman Marks, for being here. Also, we invited a few members of the community, concerned parents who walk or bike to school, and look at the turnout. There's a huge number here that I think shows that how seriously the community is taking this issue. So this is my neighborhood. I live right up that street. I live on Rosewood Avenue. My own bike and walk to school meets right here, or over there by the flowers on that pole. And I don't tell the children why there are flowers on the pole. We walk up that street, meet here, walk up Hilliard to Grant Elementary, and it's great. It's been one of the most favorite parts of my day. I see some of my neighbors here, Ted Bach, Marie Kirk. They come and they join us on this. It's a chance for the kids to exercise, socialize. The parents get to know one another. It deepens community ties. All makes sense in Ohio's most walkable city. Dan Kirk has called Lakewood School District America's most walkable school district. And note that we do not have yellow buses. We don't have a daily bus fleet to take our kids to school every day. And that's okay, that's appropriate. But what that does mean, like Emily, who is here, who bikes her daughter to school every day, that means that we've got to make sure that road and sidewalk conditions are safe, because people rely on that, whether they can afford it or whether they're necessity cyclists, they call it, and when you don't have a bike or you don't have a car, or because you choose it because it's good for your health. So what we're saying today is that we're not going to retreat from our public spaces. We've got to hang in there and make this work. We've got to hang in there and take it seriously and make it safe. There were 2 serious incidents here. There were another 2 elsewhere. At Bunsen Madison, a kid was clipped, wasn't injured, by a car making a fast turn. At Bunsen Elber, much worse. A high schooler slipped on the ice, car creeped up, thought the person was gone, serious injury, but it could have been worse. Can you imagine how intimidating and scary that is? So it's not enough. It's not okay to do business as usual. And I think what you're seeing is a growing determination by council members responding to our citizens, saying we're going to step it up and take this seriously. So before turning it over to Councilman Evans again, there are 4 E's, they call it, of successful walking and biking. The 4 E's are engineering, education, enforcement, encouragement. Engineering means make the physical conditions safe. Education means promote walking, safe driving, and safe walking and safe biking. Enforcement is what it sounds like, police attention. And encouragement means train people, get them out there so that more of us are on the streets and it becomes more normal that we're sharing the roads, okay? And what Councilman Evans has already talked about is we're working on the 1st and 3rd E's already, but what we want to announce today is that we've got to do new things to address the 2nd and 4th, education and encouragement. So I'd like to turn it over to Councilman Evans.
Thanks, Tom. So physical improvements and increased police presence, they're critical, obviously, to solutions for a safer designed city. But there's another critical component that needs to be addressed, and that's driver behavior and education. All the solutions the city is working on can deter but not eliminate the aggressive, careless, and distracted driving that we're seeing. For us truly to be a safer city, we will need to take a step back and realize how, as drivers, we have an enormous responsibility to protect not just ourselves, but our friends and our children who are crossing our streets every day. We need to do better as a community at looking out for each other, and that starts with all of us, especially those who are driving. Understanding and obeying the rules of the road, it's just so critical. These roads belong to all of us. This is not just for cars. We all have a right to use them safely, and they're simply not the domain of just those who are driving. So if everybody's responsible, why are we mainly talking about drivers today? It's pretty simple. When people or cyclists bump into each other, there's a pretty good chance there might be some bumps and bruises, but that's the end of it. If a car becomes involved, the risk of serious injury or death skyrockets. Driving is a privilege that comes with great responsibility. A passenger vehicle, which now has the average weight of over 4,000 pounds, in the hands of someone not paying proper attention or willfully ignoring the rules of the road, is a truly dangerous hazard, but especially those to people walking or on bikes who are just trying to do the right thing and use the road the way they want to. Our goal here isn't to pick on drivers or single out individual events that have happened in the past. We are appealing to all of us as a community today to please think about others when you get behind the wheel. Think about the thousands of kids who every day who are biking or walking to our schools. Think about the elderly neighbor who is just trying to get to the drugstore so they can get their medication, who's going to take a little bit longer to cross the street. Think about the family who maybe can't afford a car and they rely on their feet or bikes to get to work, to get to school, to get to the doctor, to get their errands done. And then finally, think about all the people who choose specifically Lakewood because they do not want to rely on a car to get around. They want to be able to use these roads as safely as everybody else. I'm going to turn it back over to Councilman Bullock for a moment to talk about some of the strategies we're investigating today.
Thank you. Come on. Testing. All right. So today we want to announce a series of steps, a new and strengthened series of solutions that we will support and will take legislative action where necessary to implement, including the following. First, the continued good work of the city administration to provide near-term solutions to make this intersection, this particular one, safer. And there are others, too, around the city. And I'm happy to report that the mayor's office is working to get that underway. Second, swift passage of a complete streets ordinance. Swift passage of a complete streets ordinance. That's already been introduced. It just needs to be finalized. It's been sitting in our before us. And if we do pass that, that means every time we improve our streets, we take into account pedestrians, cyclists, the differently abled, and the environment. Third, an even greater police presence to enforce traffic laws and deter dangerous drivers. I want to credit Lakewood Police. They have been increasing traffic stops of all kinds, speed, but turns, and all kinds of stuff. We've actually seen, on average, a reduction in traffic safety incidents. It's just that we're seeing these pedestrian and bicycle and kid impacts, which are unacceptable. So we'd like to call upon even more special attention enforcement so that people get it. We've got to be safe. It's our responsibility to be safe. Fourth, expansion of Safety Town. There's a program called Safety Town for incoming kindergartners. My youngest is going to do that. Well, we're going to have to pay some money to do that. I'm not sure why that's not available for all children free. Got to come up with $100. If you don't have that, maybe you don't send your kid to that. But every kid in a school district that's the most walkable in America should have that on an expanded basis. Next, 4-way police cameras at key intersections for more consistent video coverage. This camera, I think it's right over there, rotates it so it doesn't always see the incident. Simple fix. We could put more cameras to see more of the time. That doesn't prevent, but that does help to diagnose and make the improvements. And when there's a need for law enforcement after the fact, we'll have a better series of video records. And then finally, a cooperative effort needs to begin between the city and our schools and all of our concerned citizens to create programming that encourages responsible use of the roadways. That's driver education. And we'd like to introduce legislation to provide funding for that, detail what it means, and make it a sustained and ongoing program. Just for example, drivers are confused. I had a resident tell me just yesterday, like over here, where does that car merge? Are they allowed to turn when they're close or not? It's confusing. No need in this information age for all of us to be confused anymore. We've got to have clear diagrams, clear educational videos, and repeat. And there needs to really be some peer-to-peer responsibility. Not everything can be done by the city government. So we're also here just as neighbors and community residents. And that's why what's just as important as the elected officials is all these citizens here, because we've got to talk to each other in the neighborhoods and say, we're going to get this right. Lakewood's too wonderful of a community where we can walk and meet our neighbors, bike to school, get some exercise and fresh air to tolerate any safety problems. Could I turn it over to Councilman Evans and maybe our other colleagues?
Yes, just a couple of final words. When we get in our cars in the morning to go about our day, to go to work, we have a pretty good, expectation that we're going to make it home just fine and safe at the end of the day. As things stand right now, if you're using your feet or a bicycle to get around, you just can't have that same expectation, and that's not acceptable. Everyone is sharing these roads. Everyone has a right to expect to get home safely at the end of the day. That's not too much to ask. Lakewood is built for people specifically to make it easy to get around on foot or on bicycles. That's the way we're designed. It's beyond time to start paying off that promise as a truly walkable city. I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues if they have any comments.
Hi, I'm Cindy Marks. Just very briefly, I'll say that I'm Ward 4 City Council, which is on the East End, so it's Gold Coast to Birdtown. There's not a week that goes by that I don't get calls from residents that say, stop the speeding on my street. It's dangerous. And it is true. The drivers have to be more resilient about what else is happening on the street. Kids are riding their bikes, people are walking their dogs, so you have to be diligent when you're pulling out of your driveway. And the schools, like St. Ed's, often have kids racing down the street, Chesterland, when they get out of school. So we just have to be more conscientious as drivers on the road to really maintain the speed limit of 25. And that is not happening. Residents call me all the time, we want a speed bump on the road. You know, you can put all the speed bumps you want, but if people aren't following the laws that already exist, you're really defeating the purpose. We have to be more determined. And I know the police here in Lakewood are being more diligent about watching people who are speeding and ticketing. So we want to maintain the walkability of this community for the elderly residents who use their walkers and their mobility devices, as well as our bicyclists. So this is a great community, a walkable community, and we want to maintain the safety of our streets.
Thank you. My name is Cindy Strebig. I am a city council person for Lakewood Ward 3, and I'd like to thank my colleagues for pulling this together today and for all the citizens that are here on behalf of safety in Lakewood. I think that we're on our way with the beginning to look at the design of these intersections that are dangerous, this being one of them in Lakewood. There are several others that I hope that we will continue to look at throughout our city. And I do think that education and encouragement are also very important pieces to helping our citizens help enforce these policies of safety, because we can look at the police department and ask them to continue to monitor and enforce our laws, but if we don't do that ourselves, if we're not driving 25 or even 20 miles an hour down the street, we have to remember that 25 is the speed limit. Right? We can all drive slower than that and help to police ourselves and our community by enforcing the laws ourselves. I think that the idea of Safety Town is fantastic for children. I'd like to see a public campaign for Safety Town for adults. I think that a reminder of, hands on the wheel, right? Because a lot of times people are distracted with their cell phones and their coffee and their breakfast and their lunch and their dinner and everything else, and a couple kids in the back seat and everything else that distracts drivers. I think that we need a safety town for adults. Thank you all for coming today, and thank you again.
We're happy to take any questions that you have.
Hi. Could you, if possible, can you say your name again and your title, say it and spell it for us?
Yes, Brian Evans, BryanEvans, Lakewood City Council, Ward 2.
Perfect. I wonder, have any of you been in touch with the victims or their families? And if so, how much is driving first or their complaints about making this intersection safer?
Yeah, we've heard from the victims, we've heard from the families, and we've heard from countless other folks. I think pretty much everybody here we've heard from. And yes, that's a great deal of why we're all so passionate about this. I mean, safety is our top priority as it is. But when we keep on seeing these tragedies happening, that's driving us to dig deeper and find more and different ways to make the city safer. And that's why we're here today.
Are they aware of the plans moving forward?
Yes, well, this is one of the big first steps, is getting out in front of a lot of people to do that. I know the city and all of us individually utilize social media to get the plans out as best we can. These things happen in, the city newsletters, but those things don't reach everybody. So we're doing our best to use every avenue we can to make sure all the citizens know that we are working on this. We're working very hard on it. There's changes coming in the short term. There's changes coming in the long term, and that we're also committed to helping each other.
I know you said once the weather breaks, you're going to start painting, but is there a deadline to have that in? I know we can't rely on the weather.
It's really weather dependent, and that absolutely depends on, how many days in a row do we have temperatures that stay above a certain degree. But I know Public Works is committed to do that as soon as possible. I'm taking questions from the media right now, Mr. Higgins. I'm taking questions from them first. Any other questions?
I know
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of the plan. So we have a lot of baseline data that we take into account when we're looking at redoing intersections. The Complete Streets Ordinance will take that to another level. But just because of the nature of this intersection, it's so unique amongst all of our roadways in Lakewood. That's why we're taking the extra step of having a traffic engineer look specifically at this intersection to see what kind of other things we can do to calm the traffic here and make it safer.
You mentioned planters. Is that something that you hope people will be able to drive around or just be slower when they're getting to that spot?
Yeah, it's basically, if you've seen in cities where they have the bump outs to create a shorter crosswalk area, you utilize the planters to be able to do that in a temporary fashion without tearing up all the concrete. So that cars, yes, do drive around that, but it acts the same way as a bump out would, but it's just something that we can do in the meantime before we have the plan in place and the dollars to implement that plan.
Brian, I want to follow up. Just basically, the residents want action now because the weather is warming now. They're getting outside now. What's with the delay? There's only so much we can do when the weather is bad. And we're committed to doing this as quickly as we can. That's why we've utilized
Since April 2024. It's been a year.
That's why we've had an uptick in police presence here, and that's been the best tool we've been able to use to this point. Again, we are working as fast as we can to be able to get these other things implemented.
Questions for you, if you don't
Yes.
mind. If you could do the same thing and say and spell your first and last
Sure.
name and your title.
Yeah, Tom Bullock, Bullock. I'm councilman at large in Lakewood.
Thank you. You had mentioned that you've seen a reduction in traffic incidents. Is that since the incidents at this intersection? And if so, do you have any more information about that? What's been reduced?
I'm quoting our police chief secondhand in that regard. He's talking about the last 12 to 18 months. He's also he's relatively new police chief. He's increased the amount of patrols and directed a lot of resources to that. We frequently hear speeding complaints, and that's true, but it can be other traffic problems like you're merging wrong or you're tailgating somebody. In the case here, when the bicycle was hit this week, it was a turn that was too close and sharp. Now there's sun glare, and I know the sun glare because I've driven through this intersection as well. But we've got to be extra cautious, as others have said, when it's a 4,000-pound vehicle versus a bike, or a pedestrian, you know what the result is. So that's big picture. We're doing some very good things, and I appreciate that renewed focus by the police. We got to keep at it, maybe even ratchet it up, maybe even do, as one of my council colleagues pointed out, when there's a construction bottleneck, you'll have a squad car sit there with its lights on for all day. Maybe that's what we need at some of these critical intersections where they're on safe routes to schools, right? So I think it's a both end. I think the average enforcement and the average traffic statistics have been improving, and we can still experience these specific problems where the intensity of the incident is very serious. You know, and I'll add one more thing. The state government likes to say, well, we can't put up a stop sign there because we haven't had enough incidents yet. And that drives me nuts, because what are you going to do? Wait until after the accidents happen and say that the near misses that the neighbors are consistently seeing and telling us about don't count? It's only after the near misses become actual collisions that they count, and then the state government will count that as a fact that they bother to respond to. So I think it's also our job as a city to push the state standards so that they incline not towards diesel trucks but towards neighborhood use.
I just really want to close. What's the resounding promise here to residents as we move forward? You said it's going to be taken seriously, but actions speak louder than words. Actions
do speak louder than words. Sustained focus. There's not one silver bullet. It's silver buckshot. So it's a combination of those 4 E's. Okay, and so we've had some progress. I think the biggest new step here would be that we're going to introduce legislation to make a sustained driver education program, safety town for adults, as my council colleague said, and do that for the first time and do it for years. That's what it's going to have to be. And it's, as another council colleague said, it's not to make drivers wrong, but it's to recognize that this is our roads, our public space. We all keep one another safe. Here's how the bike lanes work. Here's how driving during school hours work. We're going to have to step it up. And that should not be impossible to do. It does take work, though, and more attention to detail. And even in Lakewood, we haven't been doing as much as we should. That's got to end.
What's the rough timeline on the legislation being introduced?
Wednesday. I know that some of the residents here are very experienced at biking and walking to school. You may want to talk to them. I know there's one family who every day bikes to school, not this elementary where I go, but over there. And so you've got a lot of experienced people just with the day-to-day you might want to talk to. Okay, thank you for your attention and for caring about this issue.
Dan DeRose with 19 News. As we wrap up the news conference in Lakewood, some interesting suggestions. I've never personally heard of a safety town for adults. That's an interesting idea being pitched in Lakewood to have adults go through a safety town type situation. There's also a call for the engineering, the traffic engineering staff there in Lakewood to look at this intersection in particular. We're talking Madison Avenue and Hilliard Road. You can see where the X comes together, but there is a lot going on here. You have the park and a splash pad to the north. You've got several different streets that come into Madison just as it's you can't even call this a four-way intersection. It's got about 8 different things going on. And you heard some frustration by some of the residents, someone yelling out that it's been a year and nothing has been done, saying they're going to, as soon as the weather gets nicer, they will be painting bike lanes that bright green, and they are going to ask the Lakewood Police Department to continue their upped patrols, their increased patrols there at the intersection of Hilliard and Madison. We'll have a complete wrap-up of this news conference and all of the day's news. Our 11 o'clock is underway on CW 43, then our noon news on Channel 19. Until then, I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News. Have a good day.
19 News is everywhere. Download our CTV apps and follow us on social media.